I was back home in Rwanda, sitting in my living room with my little sister Kaze, and I remember she asked innocently, "Where's Africa? I want to go there and visit." Me and my brother looked at each other and immediately bursted into laughter. We couldn't believe her question. Confused, she even started crying. "Where's Africa? Just tell me." And eventually my brother told her, "Well, Kaze, we are in Africa." But she just didn't believe us, probably thinking it was one of our regular pranks. She kept on insisting, saying, "We're not in Africa, stop lying to me, just tell me the truth." And eventually, she believed us once we showed her the map of Rwanda in Africa. It is only after reminiscing this hilarious moment 3 years later that I realized this hysterical memory might be a sign of a concerning problem. That an African herself doesn't know what Africa actually is. And I don't mean the geographical area, which you'll probably learn in school, but I mean the African people, the traditions, the culture, the places she has lived in for most of her life. But I can't blame her. The Africa that we are exposed to is completely different to our life. The Africa that's portrayed in the media, in schools, by IGOs and NGOs, by social media, is something she cannot relate to. Unfortunately, my little sister learned what Africa looks like through BBC News, TikTok videos, and our European-induced school books. These sources gave her a picture that did not match the place she lived in. And that's why today I'm here to show and expose to you the Africa that I know and the one that my little sister will definitely recognize. First of all, when you Google Africa, this is what will show up. Pictures of impoverished, malnourished people. War and conflict. Though these are accurate about some of the African issues, it is not all the continent has to offer. The lack of display of African accomplishments and the focus on political and healthcare problems overshadows who the African people actually are. And so, this is what they don't show you. This is what the news stations don't tell you. Francine Niyonsaba, a Burundian athlete who now holds a 2,000-meter world record, or different types of couscous across North Africa. Rwanda, a country that had a genocide in 1994, but is now among the cleanest countries in the world. Afrobeat and Afro house music and famous dances such as Gwara Gwara or Shaku Shaku. Different types of Afro-textured hair, hairstyles, and their tribal meaning and how they're being renovated in this era. However, the bigger question is why? Why isn't the world, nor my sister, exposed to this side of the continent? Why is there this major cultural misrepresentation? Unfortunately, this is rooted from colonization periods. The first ever written historical records of African culture came from non-Africans. Our ethnographic and archaeological remains are in European museums, such as the Royal Museum of Central Africa in Belgium, or the Museum of African Art in Belgrade. These endemic historical records were taken away from us by invaders. We cannot ignore the multiple North African libraries that were deliberately destroyed by foreigners. The point is, Africans never had the chance to tell their story in the first place, which explains a lot about how we view the continent today. The lens that was provided to understand the continent was through a European white man's lens. So hence, due to ethnocentrism, African culture could have never been appreciated. Ethnocentrism is the inability to understand other cultures. It's the evaluation of someone else's culture using the standard and norms of your own. Practices such as eating with your hands, washing your hair once every 2 weeks, or not wearing a lot of clothing was considered dirty and uncivilized by Europeans, as they had different customs, weather conditions, and scalp oil production, not because these statements were true. From an African perspective, it was considered completely normal. Initially, wearing too much clothing and shoes was considered absurd and painful. Maybe this is a sign that the resources we consider credible from researchers aren't as reliable. Is it a real depiction of African history if it doesn't involve an African point of view? And this distorted history is a major explanation behind the cultural misrepresentation that we see now. Perhaps African storytelling, songs and hymns, and African art exhibited in African museums should be our point of reference to understand the culture today. Another major reason behind the cultural misrepresentation of Africa is Hollywood. Finally, we are seeing more African-inspired movies internationally, and this representation is definitely highlighted, validated, and normalized seeing Africans in the spotlight in a positive light. However, is there any truth to it? We all know the famous song Waka Waka, the Marvel movie Black Panther, Coming to America, or Beyonce's last album, Black is King, The Lion King. These are all staple African movie and art. Nonetheless, it is barely accurate. Did you notice no real African country is ever named or labeled in these movies? For example, the kingdom of Wakanda in Black Panther, or the kingdom of Zamuda in Coming to America. Though you may believe there's no harm to this, let me show you how dangerous and harmful this could be. An American YouTuber went in the roads of the US and was asking people to name at least 3 African countries, and people could barely find 2. However, this courageous woman was able to find 3 countries. She said, courageously, South Africa, North Africa, and Wakanda. Though Hollywood and Netflix don't hold the responsibility to educate people on geography, by using African culture as entertainment, they do have the responsibility to at least represent it accurately. Hollywood has given the Eiffel Tower, British tea, and the Australian accent an international platform, one of the reasons why we know all about it today. And unfortunately, the world hasn't been given the same chance to be exposed to African culture. The usage of different languages in the movie Lion King feeds in the danger of a single story, as Chimamanda Ngozi explained in her TED Talk. A story where Africa is a whole, a country rather than a continent, where we speak African. The fact that the characters were singing to each other in the movie Lion King in Swahili, Xhosa, and Zulu implies that they understand each other perfectly. The majority of the audience will not even spot the difference between the languages, feeding in the idea that they are the same. Hollywood handpicks what fits their brand and their intended image, not the truth. In the award-winning movie Black Panther, the bald women warriors were inspired from the Dahomey Amazons, a tribe in Benin, while the male scars on their body were inspired from the Chambri tribe in New Guinea. Though it is appreciating African culture and African tribes, it is simply inspiring from their look, from their aesthetic, financially benefiting from deep-rooted culture without even giving it justice. Because personally, I do believe that they could monetarily benefit not only from the African aesthetic, but also the history. A movie about the Dahomey Amazons, historical female fighters, and political leaders resisting French colonizers in Benin sounds like an incredible catch for a movie. Hit me up, Netflix. But above all, it would educate people accurately about Africa. Hollywood has disregarded the diversity within the continent and has sent a message of identicalness, a clear and dangerous misrepresentation of Africa. And perhaps asking Hollywood to depict all the 54 countries is a stretch, an impossible task. But by multiple accurate representations of specific regions, tribes, and countries, we will achieve a better understanding of 1/7 of the world. So I want to leave you all with some questions. Are you genuinely interested in Africa? Do you know more than 5 African countries? Is an African location one of your top traveling destinations? And if the answer is no, I'm not here to judge you, but to simply showcase how there's a problem in not wanting to learn more about one of the 7 continents and giving it little importance. It reflects a lot of our societies, now more than ever, during the era of mass globalization. So I want to invite you all to your journey and to start as soon as you can. To pick a book written by an African author next time you're at the library, or to show more diverse theorists in your history and political classes. To listen to Burna Boy, a phenomenal African Afrobeat singer. I promise you'll thank me later. But above all, to intentionally search about African culture, as what is provided through the news and the movies is not quite the Africa my little sister, a gorgeous Rwandan young girl, would recognize.